Hello guys and welcome to my new video, and today we're going to be looking at the state of healers specifically in Mythic Plus content. Now there has been nerfs and buffs and they went live, and it's been a little bit of time. Players were able to kind of adjust a little bit, check out the new healer buffs, check out the healer nerfs, and specifically some of the new builds have been emerging in Mythic Plus that are extremely strong. And I think we're at the verge of discovering what is going to be the meta healer if nothing changes, and it's not going to surprise a lot of people. But let's go and check out the state of healers in Mythic Plus. Let me know which healer you're maining, let me know which healer you're pushing, and if you like these type of videos, like and subscribe. Let's go. And what we see right now is real play information. This is looking at the top 2000 Mythic Plus keys each week. You can see here Discipline Priest representation, all the healer representation in really high keys. You can click into it and see the average key level is around 15, which is relatively high. And you might ask yourself, why is Discipline Priest climbing from last week when Discipline got nerfed in terms of Atonement Transfer? And this is going to lead to the main segment of the video, because I do believe that this is the new meta healer that's going to climb higher and higher each week, because there's always the snowball effect. Why is Discipline Priest meta when it comes to Mythic Plus? And there are multiple reasons for this. Some people might be shocked, some people are probably aware of the fact that, again, Oracle is becoming the way to go for Discipline Priest. This is some of the logs for the highest keys in the world done for Discipline Priest, and you can see here right now, Oracle is just taking over. Oracle is going to be the #1 build right now when running high keys as a Discipline Priest. Now, I'm not sure if Blizzard is going to change any of this or if there's going to be nerfs. We'll talk about that later on, but Oracle is just pumping, and there are multiple reasons for this. For example, if we look at a random Discipline Priest log, this is for like a +17 cleft. This is a Void Weaver Discipline Priest. Void Weaver relies much more on Atonement Transfer. You can see here Atonement makes up a huge portion of your overall healing. Atonement was nerfed by 8.5% last week. So Void Weaver got hit relatively hard by this. Now if you look at the Oracle healing distribution, this is another random log of a +17 cleft dungeon. You can see shielding makes up a much larger portion of your overall healing, and there's a couple of other things that make up a large portion of your healing. Atonement Transfer is still a big portion, but not as big as Void Weaver, so the nerfs technically didn't hit this hero build as much. I personally don't tend to push Mythic Plus keys early on the season. I try to find which healer I want to push with, I try to gear them up, I try to find a team and see how I can min-max the raid buffs and all those things. And basically I trial a lot of the healers and see which one fits my style, which one feels strong, and which one is needed by the team. So I was looking at possibly pushing with Resto Shaman, possibly pushing with Resto Druid, and then I heard about the Oracle build and I was like, okay, I'm gonna try out Oracle with my Rat Discipline Priest. Where you see right now, my disc is around 640 item level. It doesn't have all that amazing gear. I did try out Oracle. I was reluctant about Oracle because there was no reason for me to try Oracle since now, because I've been running Void Weaver in Mythic Plus for most of my time as a priest. I'm gonna tell you right now, Oracle Discipline Priest when it comes to Mythic Plus in terms of builds, it's wild west right now. There's a lot of people trying out multiple different things, so I'm not sure what the best build is, but I tried out a shield heavy build. I was playing Oracle, and honestly I was flabbergasted by the power of this build. Now I haven't tried this build for a long time, so I'm not sure how to optimize everything when it comes to this specific playstyle, but my 640 or something along those lines item level Discipline Priest, it felt like my group was safer while playing this rat healer than some of my other healers who are 10 or 20 item levels higher. This is the kind of level of safety we're talking about. And this gameplay revolves around premonitions, and premonitions have some fun interactions. I specifically like the CDR premonition because I feel like you could optimize this in multiple different ways depending on situation. Heck, you could probably even use it on Dispel to have more Dispels available if there's a really nasty debuff going out. So I think it does have a relatively decent skill ceiling, but the gameplay and the safety that you provide specifically from shielding is absolutely insane. If you're an OG Discipline Priest who misses the days where shielding capabilities were more powerful, this build is going to be the closest you're going to get in modern World of Warcraft, because I can tell you right now, preventing damage is always better than reacting to it, and the amount of spot healing that you get from this build because your shields are more powerful and all those things is just kind of crazy. And a lot of the dungeons that have these nasty debuffs or single target debuffs, you're going to feel a lot safer with this build, on top of the fact that you also still have those double pain suppression, and pain suppression is actually stronger with this. I basically call this the ultimate babysitter build, but I don't want to glaze this too much because there are certain negative things about this. For example, your personal DPS as an Oracle Discipline Priest is going to be significantly lower than a Void Weaver Discipline Priest, but the fact that most top-end pushing groups would rather have an Oracle Discipline Priest who provides a lot of safety to the group they are willing to take the hit in terms of your personal damage, just signifies the fact that healer DPS is not all that significant, at least in this season anyways. All you have to do is look at the overall damage contribution at the end of a high Mythic Plus ski where people are optimizing their roles. You can see that healer damage isn't all that amazing, and considering the fact that Blizzard is also nerfing healer damage if they tend to step out of line, this season is going to have different priorities. But at the end of the day, you still have PI or Power Infusion, which can be very strong depending on usage, but I don't want to talk too much about this spec. Let's summarize. And in my honest opinion, I think Oracle Discipline Priest is going to run away with it if nothing is going to change. I think this representation right now is going to get worse. I think people are going to start re-rolling to Oracle Discipline Priest, and if you're a priest who's been playing Void Weaver, I think a lot of you are going to try Oracle in higher keys. And I think the fact that Priest doesn't have a lot of competition, or this doesn't have a lot of competition from other Priest specs, like Shadow Priest, means that having a Priest in a group is going to be easier to slot in. You're still providing Fortitude for your group survivability. You have Mass Dispel. There's a bunch of magic dispels in these dungeons. You also have Mind Suit, which honestly is significantly important for certain dungeons and certain routing. And you still have those PI, you have those pain suppressions, you have insane shielding. There's just a lot of things that this healer is doing really well, which I think is hilarious because my tinfoil hat theory is that everyone knows Discipline Priest Oracle in raid is a powerful build. You can see here the logs in terms of Oracle Discipline Priest doing really good numbers in Mythic raiding, and when Blizzard announced Atonement Transfer nerfs, they were specifically, or in my eyes, they were specifically targeting Void Weaver Discipline Priest performance in Mythic Plus, and they didn't want Discipline Priest to have another dominant season. But I think it's hilarious because Discipline Priest found another build that is possibly better in high-end Mythic Plus pushing. But because of this, I'll be relatively scared about catching some nerfs as an Oracle Discipline Priest, because if nothing changes, I can see most groups looking for Discipline Priest, most groups looking for an Oracle Discipline Priest when it comes to high-end Mythic Plus pushing, because I do think this spec has some really strong positives. And now let's talk about the rest of the healers in terms of how the community, real player information, how they responded in terms of some of the buffs and nerfs that happened to him. Now, in terms of Restoration Shaman, again, has exceeded a lot of players' expectations. A lot of players were really down on Restoration Shaman. I think it is a very solid healer. It provides a lot of utility out there. Now, in terms of the fixes that happened, they did, or Blizzard fixed the issue, a bug with tier set with Totemic Rejection and Surging Totem. That has been fixed, and last minute, they gave additional compensation buffs in terms of 3% overall healing to Resto Shaman, and I think they're sitting in a pretty solid position right now. Most players are pushing with that Totemic Resto Shaman right now, which I think is a very chill playstyle. And again, this kind of comes down to players gravitating towards healers that are a bit more simplistic. But you have to remember, there is a big difference between Restoration Shaman who can utilize their full toolkit, and believe me, they have a lot in their toolkit, compared to some Resto Shamans who are just doing the bare minimum. Keep in mind, most of the Resto Shamans pushing Mythic Plus are going to be Totemic. There are a few Farseer Resto Shamans. I did try out Farseer very recently, and I do have to say that Blizzard has a huge missed opportunity here, because I do think that the tier set, the healing rain, the Farseer interaction, it's just not all that amazing in terms of pure gameplay, especially considering that in Season 1, most of the Farseer Resto Shamans, or a lot of Farseer Resto Shamans, didn't pay a lot of attention to healing rain. Now the tier set kind of pushes you towards healing rain, and I think Blizzard needs to address the fun factor of using healing rain as Farseer, but that is my personal opinion. So I'm crossing my fingers for some further changes specifically to Farseer, specifically to that kind of gameplay, but we'll have to see in the future. But at the end of the day, Resto Shaman is a very solid healer that kind of exceeded a lot of players' expectations. And when we look to Mistweaver Monk, there is still a decent representation of Mistweavers pushing high-end Mythic Plus content. Now keep in mind, your damage has been nerfed, but you're still the top dog when it comes to healer damage. But I do have to say that healer DPS doesn't play as important role as you might think. Oracle Discipline Priest is an example of this, but Priest is not a good example in general because you have PI or Power Infusion. But again, Monk can still do good numbers. I think in terms of raid buffs or utility, or some of the utility they provide as a Monk, there are certain shortfalls when you compare to some other healers. So that's something to consider. But if you're enjoying your Monk, you can have good numbers, you can push keys. Now when it comes to Restoration Druid, I still think this is one of the most underrated healers out there. And when it comes to meeting healing checks, if you know how to play this healer, it is a powerhouse. And if you're a Resto Druid who's pushing high keys, you'll probably know exactly what I mean. Now, the fact that Balanced Druid is becoming more and more prevalent as a pick when it comes to that high-end Mythic Plus 5-man pushing, I think it is kind of pushing Resto Druid out in certain cases, especially considering that Discipline Priest or Oracle Discipline Priest The snowball effect is in effect right now. So even if Resto Druid is capable of meeting these healing checks, again, Resto Druid damage is really dependent on the group that you're joining, the skill levels and all those things. Even if Resto Druid is able to meet healing checks easily, the snowball is in effect right now. So Resto Druid, extremely underrated. I know this might be a little bit off topic, but I would really like to know your opinion about Resto Druid fun factor, because I've been getting a lot of different messages about Resto Druids who've been put off about the gameplay that you have for a little while now as a Resto Druid, where you're pressing a lot of your buttons just in order to allow regrowth to do the heavy lifting. How do you feel about that gameplay? Because again, I've been getting a lot of different messages and I've been really thinking about whether this kind of gameplay is really all that fun. So let me know in the comments. And now let's talk about Holy Paladin, who received some significant buffs, and I do think the representation has climbed a little bit. Again, I don't expect Holy Paladin representation to climb in a single week, or this spec to become meta in a single week. I think the buffs to spenders and things like that is really nice. Do I think Holy Paladin is going to become meta? Well, you have to compete with an already established Discipline Priest base who found the new hero build that is performing really well. So it's going to be an uphill battle, but I can guarantee you that most of the healers out there will have players who are going to be pushing high-end keys. Do I think you can push keys as a Holy Paladin and have a good time? Yes. I think all the Holy Paladins who are pushing keys, they do notice the difference, they do have a good time, and I think if you're someone who wants to play Holy Paladin, go and play it. There's always going to be a certain healer that is deemed better, and a lot of people might be swapping over to them. Even though I do believe that the healer balance is a lot better, and this graph right here does not represent what healers are capable of. Keep this in mind. In the same way, if you look at Preservation Evoker right now, they did receive buffs to their damage and healing. And if you look at healer DPS numbers right now, Prez has climbed, and I think that's really good. I think if you are a Preservation Evoker who's pushing high-end Mythic+ content, you did feel these buffs to your healing and your DPS. But like I mentioned in my previous video, do I think other healers are going to swap away from their mains or their other healing specs and go into Preservation Evoker? No. I still feel like there's multiple reasons for that, whether it's going to be learning curve or range limitations. I don't want to bang on about this. If you enjoy Prez, you can have a good time in Mythic+ if you know how to utilize this healing spec, but I just don't think the community is going to grow based on what I'm seeing right now. And lastly, we're going to talk about Holy Priest, and I honestly think it's kind of a little bit wild because Holy Priest did receive buffs, they did receive some changes to some of their talents. I still think at the end of the day, Prayer of Healing is a pretty meh ability. I don't think a lot of builds are using that, whether it's going to be raid or Mythic+. And I think Holy Priest is feeling the effects of Oracle Discipline Priest, and that is basically what happens when you play a class that is capable of playing multiple different healing specs. There's always going to be one healing spec that is going to be better, and all of a sudden every time you apply to groups, they're going to be like, I'm assuming you're playing Discipline, right? Even though Holy Priest, I still feel, like I mentioned throughout this video multiple times, I think healer balance is a lot closer than what this graph represents, and I think you can have a good time. But if you're playing Holy Priest, or if you're playing Priest in general, and if you're trying to push high-end Mythic+ content, people are going to be assuming you're playing the most popular or the powerful spec. And again, if you're a Holy Priest main, let me know how you feel about the changes that happened to Holy Priest. And let me know how you feel about this spec in general. Do you enjoy the gameplay? Do you think there needs to be further changes? So the summary of the whole video, and I mentioned this multiple times, this graph does not represent the capabilities of healers right now. Believe me, healer balance is a lot better. This is a popularity contest. I think a lot of healers are capable of pushing even high-end Mythic+ content, and if you know how to play those specs, you can have a good time. But like anything in life, people are going to find the path of least resistance. There's always going to be one or two healers that are a little bit better than everyone else, and they slot into that 5-man Mythic+ meta better because of min-maxing raid buffs and all those things. And I genuinely believe if nothing changes, Oracle Discipline Priest is going to run away with it. I think we're going to reach a point where it is going to be hard to get invited in high-end Mythic+ groups as a pug healer if you're not a priest, if you're not a disciplined Oracle Priest. I think that hero build is extremely safe. I think the fact that healer damage is not all that impactful helps Oracle Discipline Priest because your base damage as Oracle Discipline Priest isn't all that amazing. But as a priest, you do have access to PI or Power Infusion on top of plethora of other things that are really useful in high-end Mythic+ pushing. I am a little bit scared about how this Spec representation is going to change in the foreseeable future if nothing is going to be altered. And I do think, we talked about this in the Discipline Priest section, that Blizzard has reservations about Priest or Discipline Priest being so dominant for another season, but that is my tinfoil hat theory right now. There is no better substitute than playing a healer that you enjoy and making it work. Of course, that is dependent on what are your goals in World of Warcraft. Let me know how I feel about this video. Let me know about which healer you are pushing. And let me know if you did try out Oracle Discipline Priest. Did you enjoy the gameplay? Like and subscribe to this video if you enjoy this type of content. And I'll see you in my next video.